You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
Welcome to another edition of McGuire Monday here on the Toronto Sports Rush channel, brought to you by Bet Rivers. My name is Kyle Andrew, and I am absolutely and of course joined by Mr. Pierre McGuire. Pierre, it's a Monday morning. The regular season's drawing closer. Preseason action is happening. The NHL is heating up.
It's unbelievable right now. You know, I've been watching all the prospect tournaments, and then they made some cuts from that. And then I watched some of the preseason games. There's been some good action, some young players starting to make names for themselves. Most of the teams have already sent a group of players down to their American Hockey League affiliates. They'll start training camp probably Thursday, Friday, Saturday of this coming week. Most of the NHL rosters are going to start to get established here within Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So we're starting to get into the meat and the potatoes of the NHL games actually starting.
Yeah, Pierre, and we're going to talk about the preseason action for the Toronto Maple Leafs yesterday because it's actually very interesting from a roster point of view from both teams. But I want to start and kind of stick on one very specific topic today, and a change that the Leafs need that is a more difficult type of change to make. And I'm talking about accountability with this hockey team. And to me, that might be the last ingredient in putting them over the hump. And we're going to talk about a guy who you love talking about, Scotty Laughton, said in the media very straight up last week, and it was so refreshing. He said, I have to be better. I have to do a better job. I needed to be better in the playoffs. I need to be better. He put it on himself, and if that trickles through, that's exactly what could change this Leafs team fortune.
One of the things I want to give you credit for, and there's a lot I'd like to give you credit for, Kyle, but one of the things is you've been talking about this accountability thing for a while, and it goes back to the end of last year in the playoffs. Game 5 and Game 7 were not acceptable if you remember the Toronto Maple Leafs organization. As a management person, as a coaching staff, as a player, as a training staff, that was not acceptable. There was a full-on meltdown in 5 and 7 on home ice. That can't happen. So at the end of the year, they have debriefs. Every single team has a debrief with each player when they leave. What did we like? What didn't we like? How are you going to fix it? There was one player in particular I think they had a long debrief with, and that was Morgan Rielly. Morgan did not have a great year last year. They've pushed Morgan. They've challenged Morgan. Morgan has accepted the responsibility, the standards that Kyle Andrew has been talking about ever since I started working with you. And now all of a sudden it's starting to come to fruition. I think Morgan Rielly showed up in probably the best shape he's been in 10 to 12 years. That's a positive. And I like what you just said about what Scott Laughton said. He's a Toronto kid coming home, lots of pressure. I didn't like his game last year. We talked about it on the post-game shows. I didn't like, and I'm a huge fan. I know the kid really well. I like him very much. He didn't play well. I think he'll play a lot better this year. I think Toronto's going to be a lot better. And I keep saying it. And I'm very, very confident saying it. They'll be a lot better than what the pundits are saying.
Yeah, and the whole accountability thing with someone like Laughton, just hearing what we're saying right now and not taking it personal and acknowledging the fact that, yeah, I should have and could have been better. Now, how much of that was coming out of the atmosphere that had been bred in Philadelphia? But, you know, when you look up and down this roster at accountability, to me, there's two camps of accountability. You have the veteran guys like Laughton and the superstar guys in one camp. They are, at this point in their career, they will serve this team very well by being publicly accountable with the media. Like, this is stuff Laughton said, I believe it was to the Toronto Sun. That's a big media presence. They already are accountable to each other. But then you have the young guys that we see in the dressing room, and their accountability becomes more to their teammates. They're not in the media as much. They're trying to be accountable to the coaching staff and their teammates to get to the point where they're now mainstays on a roster, and then they become accountable to the fan base and media. So let's go back to a veteran presence. And Austin Matthews making public comments about someone like Easton Cowan, saying he looks bigger and stronger. That Leafs Nation reported on that. Everyone's reporting on his leadership role, saying things to the media like, you guys have 2 weeks left to ask me about Mitch Marner, then we're done because he's not on this hockey team anymore. Being a little more forceful about things like that, accepting the responsibility of not having generated the offense that he's used to generating last year. He is being publicly accountable in the way captains, high scorers, veterans need to be.
Agreed, and more agreeing. And here, Kyle, you know, it's interesting because we talked last year about changing the DNA. And then all of a sudden we read that the general manager says, we got to change the DNA of this team. Yeah, they did. They need to get harder. They need to be more robust. And they need to stop using the Toronto market as an excuse. And so I read the quotes from Morgan Rielly. And Morgan Rielly goes, that's nonsense. Playing here is amazing. I love playing here. It's nonsense that this is a tough market. And I would agree with them. Look, I've coached in the league for a long time. I've broadcast in the league for over 25 years. And I'll just tell you right now, there's some markets that are harder than others. There's no question. I don't think Toronto's a hard market. I think Montreal is a hard market. I think New York is a hard market. I think Chicago is a hard market. I think Edmonton's a really difficult market. I think Vancouver's an unbelievably unmerciful market. Really difficult. And so, with all due respect to the people out there saying Toronto's a hard market, I think if you were to ask most players in the league, would you want to be a Toronto Maple Leaf? I think most guys would say, yeah, I would. Wouldn't bother me playing there.
I absolutely love that Rielly came out and say that, because there's a lot of eyes on him this year. His production's probably, from a points point of view, about 50% lower than it needs to be. He had 41, probably need to see him around 60. But just to talk about the market that way, the thing that often doesn't get talked about is that, okay, yeah, when it's bad, but you can't obtain the same highs in Utah. Like the highs of being an elite Toronto Maple Leafs team, being a member of that roster, that's almost incomparable. But what you could bring to a city and to a fan base that needs it so desperately, as opposed to a smaller market team.
I think the best players are up to the challenge. They want that challenge. They crave that challenge. They want to be part of something special. Being part of an original six championship team is amazing. I'll never forget Boston 2011, how excited their entire fan base was. Their player watching Zdeno Chara, Mark Recchi at over 40 years of age, Patrice Bergeron hoisting the Stanley Cup in Vancouver after winning a Game 7 on the road. Unbelievable. Like, you go look at Detroit in 08 and 09, look at 97, 98, 02. The Detroit passion was back. It's electrifying to be around their group. I think whenever you win in an original six market, it's massive. I think about Chicago in 2010. I think about Chicago in 2013. Think about Chicago in 2015. I was there for all of them. It's amazing to see. And it's not to knock Florida, and it's not to knock Tampa or Carolina or any of these other teams that have won, even LA. But there's something magical about winning in an original six market that does make a difference.
Yeah, like there's not other cities where a third liner could become a local legend based off of a similar thing. But it's true. And it's true. The upside of playing in these markets is, well, let's be very clear. The roller coaster, like the variance between the bottom and the top of what player would experience emotionally, that's not for everyone. And when some guys leave, some guys go, it's not a knock on them. Some guys just belong in a lower pressure environment, and some guys will thrive in this environment. And again, now here we are into the show. It's still about accountability. And it's really going to be the theme of this Leaf team, because you're going to pick apart, this player should have had 15 more points last year. They were that close. They were that close. So it becomes these things that are just a little bit more difficult to measure.
What I think is kind of cool about this year? The Olympics. The Olympics are an amazing motivator. So if you have a team that's got some stars on it, like Toronto, John Tavares, Austin Matthews, Matthew Nyes, star players, no question. You can't say they're not. They're star players. Those guys are motivated. Like, does Oliver Ekman-Larsson have a legitimate chance to be on the Swedish Olympic team? I think he does. So he's going to now he's playing probably in the 5-6 role for Toronto. He may get the second power play. So you look at it, there's internal driving components to this thing that I think help Toronto. It doesn't hurt Toronto. And I'm excited to see that part of it, because I do think Austin wants to atone for last year. I think Austin knows he can be better. I don't think he was healthy. I think we all know that. Sounds like he's a lot fitter and a lot more healthy this year, which is positive. JT was phenomenal, has been phenomenal so far in camp. I thought he had a great year last year, Johnny T. I really do. So I look at, and I think Michelli, that I've talked about this a lot, Kyle, and you've been right with me from the beginning. Matias Michelli is going to be one of the great surprises of this National Hockey League season, because most people didn't watch him play in Arizona. And I don't know too many people from the East Coast that watch the Utah Mammoth play at night. They don't.
It's just not likely at all. It's just, the way that everything is shaping up going into this year, like so many guys, like Austin Matthews, I don't think anyone's questioning his ability. We're just questioning, how injured was this guy last year? We don't really have a super clear picture of that, but it's very clear that he was not himself. He said it, but they don't need to go into specifics. He seems very keen on just moving forward through this process, which is fantastic. It is the correct way to handle it. It is the past. Morgan Rielly's taken accountability. Morgan Rielly is the type of guy who, as we just discussed, thrives playing in this environment. There is so much room for potential. Goaltenders are healthy. Look at what we saw in Ottawa yesterday, and I'm not the type of person at this point in any of the major sports, preseason action, it doesn't mean a lot. It's an exhibition, but I found it very interesting that Ottawa basically fielded a lineup that was similar to their end of the season team last year, and Toronto only had a couple of guys from their starting roster out on the ice. They're looking for something different than Ottawa right now. The Leafs aren't worried about their guys gelling. The Leafs are worried about those last few spots. And to put all those guys out there fighting, there was so many guys on the ice fighting for one or two positions and a little bit of a look throughout the season to get called up. That's what we saw.
Marshall Rafai, Philippe Myers, and there's one other one. Henry Thrun. Those are the three.
Yeah.
Those three guys last night were on the lineup.
Yeah.
Thrun had a turnover. Myers played really well offensively, I thought, and could be better defensively, but started to assert himself, and they're comfortable. They trust him. And Marshall Rafai showed a lot of gumption when he fought Zach McEwen. So I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, those guys know. They don't have to be told. They know. They can do the math. We got to get involved here, because if that guy beats me out or is better than me, I'm not playing for Toronto this year. I'm going to be playing for the Marlies. It's a big difference, pay-wise in particular. So, no, I'm with you 100% on that. Internal competition makes everybody better. My biggest thought is what happens with Dakota Joshua, what happens with David Kampf, what happens with Stevie Lorentz, what happens with Callie Yarncroke that scored last night. I think those guys are the guys that are fighting it out. Are you going to stay relevant, or are you going on waivers? Because every one of them has to go on waivers to be sent down. So that's why you watch this now. You're not watching the stars right now. It's to your point. You're watching these young guys battle it out, because every single one of those guys I just named, in order for them to go down in the American League, they have to go on waivers.
Yeah, Austin Matthews had said something else in the media. I apologize to whoever got this quote, but he was talking about how, this time of year, and I'm going to assume this is applying to most of the guys he will be skating with up at the big club this year. The guys are just trying to shake off beer league habits from the summer, right? They're trying to feel bodies. He was saying, you feel body, you feel a little bit of contact, you feel actual competition. So that's what the senior guys are looking for right now. They're not worried about whether, Nyes and Matthews can gel. They're worried about, is Easton Cowan ready? They're all of these things. Who is our actual third goaltender in this line right now? All of that. But there's something about the way he's being quoted in the media right now. There's a thoughtfulness to it that I think, the adjustments to Austin Matthews' games, to me, this is where we need to see it, is how he handles all of the things off the ice. He's got that C on his chest right now, and I think he's doing a pretty good job in the offseason. I mean, if he's healthy, we might be seeing one of his best seasons ever from all angles.
If Austin can do 40 to 50 goals and 90 to 105 points, that's a huge year. It's a huge year. And for him, for anybody, but that's a huge year. And I believe if he's healthy, he'll do that. I was really encouraged to see, because I was saying this both on the air and off the air, who replaces Marner on the power play. And if it's Morgan Rielly, if it is, I think that's a good fit. I think Morgan will be super motivated to run that power play and to be a point producer. And that's going to be important for Toronto. So that's a positive. Who's going to run the second power play? Can it be Oliver Ekman-Larsson? He's done it before. I think he can. But we'll see how that works. But to me, what you just touched on, the leadership component is huge. Johnny Tavares is there to insulate Austin Matthews. I think with a guy like Scott Laughton, who you opened the show with, Scott Laughton knows how to compete. He knows how to win. He's been a captain of a major junior team. He's been a captain for Canada at the international level. Scott Laughton's a winning kid. He is. He's a winning kid. If he's playing as your number 4 center and he's playing the way he's capable of, you're starting to get into that realm with Florida, where you've got the top guys, whether it's Barkov, whether it's Bennett, whether it's Lundell, and then Nosek. If Scott Laughton's your number 4, I'd rather have Scott Laughton than Tomas Nosek.
Yeah.
You know, if Nicky Dubois is playing the way he's capable of as a number 3 center in Toronto, it's going to cause problems for Florida. He's going to cause problems for Tampa. He's going to cause problems for Carolina. Like, I'm looking at all the upper echelon teams in the East. Toronto's going to cause problems down the middle for a lot of these teams, but it all starts, and I think it all finishes with Austin Matthews.
Of course it does. Back to Waugh for a second and then Rielly. Waugh, like, to me, when they got him, that seemed like a direct message to the Florida Panthers. Like, this guy is coming in to bridge the gap between us and you right now. That he's the prototype size guy. He's got the hands he can play with on the ice. He can kind of do it all in a way that so much of that Florida lineup deeper into the third and fourth lines can. And, you know, Waugh on most other teams in the league, that's a borderline second line guy, right? So, you know, or if not even borderline, but the Leafs are that deep. But back to Rielly and the power play. Obviously, the Leafs had very good results at times last year running the 5-forward power play. If Rielly plays the way we hope and think he should rebound into this year, he's not a 41-point guy, he's a 60-point guy again now. He would be indistinguishable from that fifth forward on the power play, yet provide them that defensive cushion to, you know, to actually have a true defender out on the ice with them too. I think that gap, him to bridge, will move them away from the 5-forward power play, but it would also be the correct decision.
It would be. And the other part is, and this is not a knock on Mitchell. Mitchell Marner is a great player. I'm one of his biggest fans.
Of course.
He can't shoot the puck over the one-timer from, 45 feet the way Morgan Rielly can.
That's right.
So now the shooting option's much more apparent, where teams have to stretch on their penalty kill, and that's going to open up seams, whether it's a backdoor seam to Johnny Tavares, whether it's a backdoor seam to Matthew Nyes, whether they play, a bumper position, they put Austin Matthews in the bumper. I don't know what they're going to do. But I'm just telling you, that one-timer up high, that opens up a lot more when you're doing a power play construction. I think that's one of the subtle differences that I think Craig Berube and Mark Savard in particular, who runs the power play, I think that's one of the subtle differences they'll have at their disposal compared to last year with the 5-forward power play.
Pierre, that's a fantastic point, because one of the things you did notice with the Leafs, without a true and full perimeter shooting threat, it was very easy for teams on the penalty kill to simply clog up the center and not let any pucks through. There was just not a shooting lane. There's not a passing lane. There's no backdoors. There's none of that stuff there, because if you don't, it's just like, if you're in a basketball game and there's no 3-point shooting threats on the court, you don't need to worry about defending the 3-point shot. It takes out a whole element of hockey if there's not a big booming shot, and not just the shot, like the velocity and stuff, but the ability to control it, keep it low, make it ready for a tip, and all of those other things that Rielly, at the top flight of his game and within his capability, he is absolutely capable of being that hockey player.
100%. I'll say this because he's a Toronto guy. When we had Paul Coffey in the power play in Pittsburgh, he's surrounded by a lot of guys like Mary Lemieux, Joey Mullen, Kevin Stevens, Mark Gregg. We had some pretty good players, Larry Murphy. But when Paul left our power play, it wasn't as good because we didn't have that shooting element. Larry could get the puck through, and he was a great distributor, but his shot didn't have the same velocity as Paul's did. So it changed how we drew up a schematic for the power play. And it wasn't that we weren't good. It just was a different kind of power play. I think with Morgan being there, you're going to see a different power play, but I also think it's going to be a better power play.
I agree completely. Pierre, I'd like to know what else is catching your eye, not even for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but around the league early in this preseason.
How quickly teams are getting to their rosters or trying to get to their rosters. A lot of younger players who are good players are either being sent back home to play junior or being sent back to Europe. It's more quick this year than what I've seen it in other years. So that's one thing. I think people realize that there's not a lot of room for error coming out of the gate for a lot of these teams if you want to be a playoff team. The one division that I think will struggle will be the Metro. I think the Metro will probably be one of the weaker divisions. That's the way it's looking now. Maybe it changes because a couple teams make some trades. And there's some dark horses out there. Like we talked about Utah, kind of nobody watching their game, but people better be watching them if you're in the league. I think they're going to be improved. And I think Anaheim's going to be improved. I wouldn't look at their preseason results because they're playing a lot of young kids. And if they get Mason McTavish signed, I think Anaheim could be a sleeper in the West. They really could be.
Interesting. And you know what? I just thought of something else I wanted to circle back with you earlier in the show, but I'm going to do it now. We'll close on this. Toronto Maple Leafs, Matthew Nyes. I've been reading reports, and I might be biased because we do these shows for the Toronto Sports Rush and not. I think it's crazy that people are still referring to him as a U.S. Olympic team bubble player. He should be on that team. I'm shocked. Like, are they not watching have they not seen the way this guy's improved in the last 24 months, 18 months?
He's a prototypical power forward that makes a difference. And you already got built-in chemistry with Austin Matthews. I'm not saying they would have to play together, but if they did, it's instantaneous chemistry. That's number
Absolutely.
one. There are two players. One of them is Matthew Nyes, and the other one is Lane Hudson. I don't get it. Like, I understand they were mad at Lane Hudson because he didn't go to the World Championships. I get that. I understand. So they're trying to send a message to everybody else long term. But you know what? Put it in the pocket because you guys won gold last year anyways. Lane Hudson should have been invited to that orientation camp. I know they didn't go on the ice. I know it's not a big deal, but just let's call it what it is. That was politics 101 in hockey. You don't want to see it at that level. And I do think both those players, Nyes and Hudson, are legitimate, not bubble. They're legitimate candidates to be on the Olympic team.
It's every time I read a report, I mean, in my case more so with Nyes and stuff, I just find it inexplicable, especially because of the tie to Matthews, who is going to be the best player on Team USA. Why would you not want that guy? And the style Nyes plays, like if you look at the other teams in the Olympics that they need to find their way through, obviously Canada, you've got the Swedes and stuff. The way he plays hockey is exactly how you need a guy to play to beat those other teams.
And you're spot on. And the other thing is, how healthy will Matthew Tkachuk be? Matthew Tkachuk's probably not going to play a hockey game until January.
Yeah.
Because of off-season surgery and long-term injury repercussions that came out of the Four Nation event last year, by the way. The tournament didn't mean anything except pocketing some dough. So we'll see. But Matthew Nyes is not a bubble. He's a legitimate candidate. He is, just like Lane. I believe Lane Hudson is as well.
No, you're absolutely right, Pierre. Thank you once again for joining us here on the Toronto Sports Rush Network. I know I'll be seeing you later in the week, so keep an eye out for that. You'll be joining myself and Dan O'Toole. But for now, this has been another episode of McGuire Monday.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.